Recording.
Attack. 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 So, welcome to everyone to our 2012 Heru Knetic Planetarium Conference Winter Solstice festivity. And I'm glad everyone made it. I don't know if the bodies are just getting lazuli, older, and it just seems a little bit more inertia to get here, but we all made it. And peace and blessings to all those who are here and all of those who are here in spirit with us. So today's program, it's going to be on the story of Lord Jehuti and Goddess Heru, the myth. And you've heard that myth before, and I myself have given it like in previous years. And it's going to come with just a little bit of a twist today. It's actually not going to be the whole myth, but it's going to be an abbreviated myth to focus on one specific point. And actually it's going to intertwine a little bit of the Assyrian resurrection story as well. Specifically the Heru and Set, the higher self, lower self aspect, the battle of Heru and Set. Is there anyone here that's not familiar with the battle of Heru and Set? Are you familiar with it? Okay, so I have okay. So it's going to intertwine that as well also. And so the title is Heteru Aha, Heteru Stand Up. And the overcoming feebleness of the mind through Knetic. That comes from a proverb that we're going to see in the presentation. It's one of my favorite proverbs. And it's going to explain what we mean by the feebleness of the mind. So we'll start with a chant. Call and response. Dua heteru netrita.
Dua heteru netrita.
Dua heteru sekema.
Dua heteru sekema.
Dua heteru neptawi.
Dua heteru neptawi.
Dua heteru satnesura.
Dua heteru satnesura.
Dua heteru netrita.
Dua heteru netrita.
Dua heteru sekema.
Dua heteru sekema.
Dua heteru neptawi.
Dua heteru neptawi.
Dua heteru satnesura.
Dua heteru satnesura.
Adorations to Hathor, the great goddess. Adorations to Hathor, the great power. Adorations to Hathor, the mistress of the earth. Adorations to Hathor, beloved daughter of Ra. So this is our Het Netter, or temple of a set, or Het Netter or set. And I always say this is Kemet, Africa, is where we are today. This is our sacred space that we've created. And why do we need a sacred space? We need a sacred space because when human beings become involved in the world, they forget their true nature. The Kemetic teachings tell us that men and women are immortal gods and goddesses, but yet that is forgotten. And that is the story of the Glorious Light Meditation, the story of the myth of Goddess Hathor and Lord Jehuti. This is what happened to Goddess Hathor. And we'll see it's reflective of what happens to human beings when they incarnate into the world. So the myth has 4 basic themes. It goes through Heteru's greatness as the goddess, and then her fall from that greatness, and then her elevation back, the journey back to that greatness, and then the final attainment of spiritual enlightenment of Nahas. Just briefly about the myth, it can be found inscribed in the temple of Sage Setiua around 1350 BCE in Kemet. And it is inscribed, and what is unique about it is the first codified, complete system of meditation. It includes descriptions for the posture. It says how the aspirant should visualize, and you can see the glorious light meditation blankets. We have that. Visualize themselves sitting in the center point in a circle, the Benjamin point in a sun disk. It gives a visualization that your body is to be like Ra on the day of his birth, which means like Ra is the sun. If you look outside, the sun is effulgent in light, so you visualize your body full of light. And then it gives a chant also, Nukekau, Nukra Aku, Nukbara, Nukekau. So it's actually very intricate. We have yet to do it in its full entirety, the whole glorious light meditation system. The sevenfold cleansing for 3 days and all of that's involved in it. It involves the serpent power system as well. That's very beautiful. These are the old covers for the books, but the meditation is detailed in the meditation book, Ancient Egyptian Path to Enlightenment, and also the Glorious Light Meditation book. So this is our religion, and our Shetaneta religion has 3 aspects. So we consider that a religion is an authentic religion if it has 3 aspects, and those 3 aspects are, they're up there. I was trying to go through it fast, so everything is just on the screen today, except for one. So we have the myth, which is the Matanu, the ritual, which is the Aru, and the mysticism, which is the Shetaneta. So if a religion does not have all of these 3 aspects, then we don't consider it to be an authentic or complete religion. And that brings about strife and conflict in the world, because the mysticism part is where the religion gets the essence of the oneness and the wholeness and the universality of everyone in creation. And so if you don't start there, then your myth and your ritual are going to be limited and uninformed by that. And then it's going to be based on egoism, so then you're going to get people against each other, your religion against my religion. So the sages bring forth teachings through these mythologies, and the myths are very profound. They have many, many different levels. So there's a level of Sejet, which is storytelling, and of course that appeals to children, the Red Keep, the common folk, the general public, and also the initiated. So the myths have teachings at each level for each of those different groups. So everyone can really enjoy it and benefit from it. And then there's also an aspect of devotion. The aspect of devotion is like to love something, you have to kind of know it. It's hard to, like, if a stranger just walks in this room, it's hard to like say, oh, I love you, or I like you, or I care about you. But say like we've all been gathering here, and we come every year, so we see each other, and there's this feeling of love, and it flows very easily. You don't have to force it, because there's a sense of knowing the other person and feeling close to them. So as you go through the myth and you get to know the characters and their plight and their story, and it brings forth that love, that devotional feeling towards the divinities, and who ultimately are the divinities. Your own higher essence, your own aspects of your personality. So it's a profound way, when we say self-love, this is divine love is the most profound aspect of self-love. And then Shamsu Uja an emulation. Emulated the divinities. You see how they act. You see how they carry themselves. You see how they respond to certain situations. So you're able to do that, and that brings forth burning aspiration for attaining enlightenment. And then divine grace, that the sages and the divinities, that they actually brought forth these myths from ancient times, which today are still very relevant in everyone's life who wants to attain the Has. And that they're still here, and they're still leading everyone here to attain the Has in this lifetime. And then also it details the universality of the human condition, the human predicament. That's not only your issue, or you're not only having these problems, that it's a human issue. And how to overcome the challenges and attain the goal of life in the Has. So the story begins in ancient times. Ra created human beings, and he himself ruled as king on earth. And the beings that he created loved him and adored him, and they praised him. Dua Ra, Dua Ra, Dua Ra, Kepara. But then as Ra started to become old, people started to turn away from him and blaspheme him. Like when they wanted to do something and they would go to Ra and say, hey, we want to do this, Ra, and Ra would say, no, that's not good to do. They started saying, I think Ra's getting senile, because when he was younger, he would have, okayed this, but now he's saying no. I don't understand why he's, telling me no. And so they started basically to talk about him. They think he's getting old. They think he's getting senile. They stopped listening to him. They turned away from him. And they started to do their own things that they wanted to do, that they felt that was righteous, but really was not. They could not see that. So they started to worship themselves. The Rikki symbol there is common folk. So they started to worship themselves, do their own thing. And much as we see in the world today, it's the same story. It's the same situation. People, they don't go to mysticism as the basis to inform the culture, to inform the religion, and therefore people are doing their own thing. They don't think of what is this going to do for the land. The land is Gap, it's the divine being. Well, how is this going to affect our goddess Nut, the sky? If we do this, they don't have those considerations. So the divinities were very upset by this, because they were killing each other, letting the blood run into the lakes, into the rivers, and so all the Neteru went to Ra and said, hey Ra, we have a big problem. These people, they're blaspheming you, they're talking badly about you. Not only that, they're polluting us, they're destroying the land. What are we going to do? So 2 years ago, I focused on the glyphs. I'm not going to focus on that just for the sake of time, but the glyphs are there and the translations in there. I'm just going to do the contextual translation. So Ra went to his daughter, goddess Heru, his right eye, and on behalf of himself, he asked goddess Heru if she could travel. And what he wanted her to do was to travel and to go into the lands and to destroy these unrighteous, blaspheming people. So to do this, goddess Heru turned herself into a different form. She turned herself into the Sekhmet, the lioness form. And this is aspect of the theme of the myth, the greatness. Now, the lioness aspect, and I think I took out that slide because I was cutting back in slides. The feline aspect is a very powerful aspect in the Knetic mysticism. The lioness aspect has the power. If you notice, like the priests and priestesses, they wear the leopard pelts. So that has to do with destroying evil. They're a very powerful force, and it's symbolized by goddess Heru, that force to destroy evil, like the way a cat would destroy a mouse. So destroying evil and unrighteousness. And Heru, as the right eye of Ra, is also known as the fire-spitting serpent. So keep an eye on that, because that's going to be important for Seba Ma's lecture. You see her here, right? The serpent, the sun disk, and it's spitting forth fire. And the sun is a symbol of Ra. And you know how sun, especially those of you who live in Arizona or California, what happens every summer? And in Florida we have them too. What happens when the sun comes out and there's no rain? Pardon me?
Wildfires.
Everything, fire everywhere. So that's Heteru, scorching the land, destroying the unrighteousness, metaphorically speaking. But that is the power of Goddess Heteru as the serpent. As the lioness. She is Sekhmet. She's the life force energy. She controls the life and death of each and every person. If she withdraws her breath, the life force is withdrawn and the person dies. So Heteru was sent into the mountains to slaughter the enemies of Ra. As the foremost power to fetter and overthrow in the form of Heteru, she even went to very remote distances, very remote lands, and she was just killing and slaughtering the enemies of Ra. She even expanded the area that she was traveling, and she went into vast, far-off lands, remote lands, and she killed so many people that she actually created graveyards in the hills. Now think about that. Picture graveyards in the hills, like piles of people that are just dead bodies, and I don't want to relate it to any recent incidents we've had, but she just piles of mountains of people that are unrighteous. So after she killed all the not all, but many of the unrighteous people, right? She did what Ra sent her to do. Ra went to Heteru and he says, Heteru, Ementet. Heteru, come in peace. Ari tenari, the deeds are done. The deeds that I send you to do are done. You've killed the unrighteous people, so come. But there was a little bit of an issue, a little problem. Heteru did not return. She did not want to come back at that point in time. So we're getting into the second theme of the myth, which is her fall. Heteru gave an eloquent speech to Ra. Jed an neter ten ankh, Kadian Sekhmet and Emrentutu EU Najem. Speech by goddess, you life be to me, all power of Sekhmet on men and women to be sweet. The strength and the force. So basically she's saying, Ra, you gave me this life, and you gave me all of this power of the life force over men and women. Iu Nejem, my heart finds it sweet. Iu Nejem Arab, my heart finds it sweet. So Sekhmet actually indulged in Sekhmet actually started to indulge in drinking beer at night. Does that sound familiar? How low can you go? Drinking beer at night. And then she's running about, killing people. And I particularly like how the scripture talked about spewing blood. And these are supposed to be lips. This glyph here. And the lips are spewing forth of the blood. Very graphic. And so Ra all this time was trying to meet with the other Heteru to figure out a way to get Heteru back. And it became a little drastic, and he had to take action when Heteru now not only was killing the unrighteous men and women, but now she started to kill the righteous ones. And so Ra quickly realized that he's not going to have anyone left to worship him if she continues this. So at this point, Heru had become a degraded personality, a very degraded personality. She had forgotten her true essence, and this is what we refer to as egoism, and she became an ego personality. So who is Heru? So Heru is the projection of Ra into the world of time and space, right? If Ra is the sun, she's like the rays of Ra that project out. She is the power of Ra. She's an extension of Ra in time and space that he sent forth to do this. So the question is asking, who is Heru? Who is this extension of Ra into the world of time and space that Ra sent?
We are.
Correct. So this is about all human beings. All human beings are children of Ra, here in the world of time and space. Not just us here. I think about all human beings are supposed to be this. And doing righteous deeds on behalf of Ra. But what has happened in the world? There's this forgetfulness of self. And therefore, people are engaged, living their lives, doing their different things. But there's not the spiritual awareness that influences or informs the behaviors and actions. So what's needed at this point is an intervention. Intervention. So just briefly to go through, Heru became an ego personality. And what we mean by an ego personality, just so that everybody's clear about it, is that it's an erroneous or wrong idea or belief or a thought or understanding. So it's actually not anything concrete, physical. It's a wrong understanding, a wrong belief, a wrong way of thinking, a wrong way of believing about yourself. And believe in yourself to be an individual, separate from everything and everyone, and identified with your mind-body complex as being the who you are. This is an important point also, because many times aspirants, when they come into the teachings, they think of the ego personality as being the problem. So sometimes you see this like in the Eastern traditions, where they see the body's the problem, and there are even like Eastern stories that talk about how they, what do you call them? Not the aspirants, what's the term they use? Asceticas?
Ascetics.
The ascetics, yeah. How they do stand in cold water and do all these things because the body's the problem, or they want to throw their bodies off a cliff because the body's the problem. So the body's not the problem. The ego personality is not the body, it's not the mind, but it's the believing in those that is your true essence. So it's the thought is the idea. So that's what the problem is. And so in Knetic Unitarian philosophy, this concept of egoism is embodied by this character we call Set. And so that moved the hand a little too fast. So the ego personality. So the metaphor for today, or the analogy we're going to use for the higher self, is going to be the sky. The sky is like the higher self, all expansive, and the ego personality are these little patches of blue that have been created by the clouds. And so each of these little patches of blue is in fact, what happens if you rise above the clouds? What do you discover? What do you discover about this patch of blue relative to the sky?
It's the same.
It's the same. Is there any separation? Is there any difference? No. So this, generally, when aspirants come into the teachings, this is what they come in with. They come in thinking that they're this ego personality, that they're, the mind-body complex, and maybe there's a little bit of spirit there, but even if there's a spiritual awareness, it tends to be also like basically a little piece of the idea of whatever the self is. It's not holistic. It's not universal. So it's basically set. And the clouds in this analogy are the mental thoughts that condition the awareness and experience and understanding of your true essence. So the thoughts that of yourself being the ego personality, that's basically what the clouds are. And there are 3 states of mind that in Knetic mysticism. So there's the dull and agitated state, and this is a state where most people in the world are. There's a few dull, there's a lot agitated, and then we're going to get to the other states. So the dull state of mind are when the thoughts are so dense, are so heavy, are so dark, essentially that there's not much blue sky that's there that you can see. So it's when the thoughts are so dark and so heavy, so like filled with anger, filled with hatred, like deeply depressed, that there's only like a little patch of awareness of that spiritual essence that is able to come forth to sustain the person, but they pretty much they're depressed, they're angry, they're hateful. So it's a very dull mind. And you can see also the male genitalia there that links it and relates it to having too much sex, too much promiscuity and things like that, that type of behavior. And then the agitated mind is where most of the people in the world are, in the shesh. And you can see like the little waves of the ocean waves. The waves are always moving back and forth, back and forth. And so with those waves, the clouds, they come and they go. They come and they go. There's likes, there's dislikes. There's happy, there's sad. The clouds are moving back and forth. And so there's patches of blue, and the clouds move away, and there's expansion. Oh, this is so nice. I feel happy. Then the clouds come together a little bit. Oh, I'm like a little depressed and sad. I feel tired. I'm like, worried. I'm anxious. And then the clouds move away. Oh, it's a good day today. Look at the sun shining. Oh, it's horrible. The rain is falling. It's going to be a terrible day today. So there's this movement, this agitation of the mind, always up and down, likes and dislikes. And then there's the lucid states of mind, the third state. And there's 2 aspects of the lucid state of mind. There's one aspect of the lucid state of mind that is still linked to the ego, and that's the aspect of, when people go on vacation, they take all their worries, and they pull them out of the mind, and they take all those worries and they set them on the table at home, the bed nightstand, and by the bed. They say, you worries, you're going to stay there because I'm flying to Hawaii, and I'm not even going to think of you. And then they go to Hawaii, they go to the beach, and they're all relaxed, and they're enjoying it, and they go, oh, life is wonderful, oh, and then they start to have all these beautiful thoughts about how life and what they can do when they get back home to make their life so wonderful. This is truly living, I feel so relaxed, and so that is, and they can maybe write a poem, and just get into more subtle aspects of life, but that, and the next they want to buy a house in Hawaii, because the key to their happiness is Hawaii. They don't realize the key to happiness is that their mind has been able to relax. So that lucid state is still tied to doing things to be happy, rather than just happiness being the state of your higher self. So you still have to go somewhere. So every year they have to go back to Hawaii to be happy. They can't find the happiness where they are because that's stress, and Hawaii is happy. And then there's the lucid state of mind, which is what sages have. And in both lucid states of mind, you can see there are less clouds. So there's more experience of the sky-like divine essence of who you are, more experience of that happiness and peace. In the lucid mind of the enlightened personality, the difference between that and the one that's egoistic is that this one is fully identified with higher nature. The enlightened person is identified with their true essence as the essence of who they are. And they still have a mind, right? They still work through mind, but the mind is very pure. And therefore, they still have thoughts, but those thoughts are pure. And you can see here the thoughts, these are the thoughts of the agitated mind. You see here it says the self. Well, in this one of the dull and agitated mind, the thoughts, I hate this, I love this, money, worries, anxiety, yesterday, today, tomorrow, what happened, last week, what happened a year ago, how I'm grieving about it, I can't let go of it, I can't forgive myself, I can't forgive this other person. All of that is here, and it obstructs the self. in the lucid state, there are thoughts, especially for the sage-like mind, but the thoughts and desires are pure and they don't obstruct the essence of who you are. It went ahead too far. What? It's going to play this again. Okay. Okay. So, when the mind is caught up by egoism, by Set, then the I, that is your true essence, becomes associated with these, what is it, is it an adjective or verbs? What are they? I worry, becomes conditioned by these egoistic sentiments. So I hate and I fear, I worry, I'm greedy, I'm selfish, I'm envious, I'm anxious, I'm lustful. And if you realize those are also what people say when they're all stressed out, right? Like the worries, the anxiety. So this is also, Set is also that stressed out state of being that most people in the world are when they are worried or they're anxious and they're frustrated or, all of those states are setting. So when one identifies with the ego personality, then happiness, which is supposed to be the state of the higher self, the state of who you truly are, becomes corrupted. And instead, life becomes like a roller coaster ride. And emotions become a roller coaster ride. So it becomes this thing that we refer to as hoppiness. Become like a little frog. And what happens is that people are trying to jump from one happy moment to the next happy moment. And they don't realize that life is alternating experiences of prosperity, adversity, pleasure, pain. That is the nature of life in the world of time and space. Your true essence transcends all that. When you realize your true essence, you too can transcend the up and down. There will still be experiences in the world of time and space that are prosperous and adverse, whether you're enlightened or you're not enlightened. There's going to be practical things that are going up and down. But you no longer, your emotions are no longer tied into that aspect because you're no longer set. So you're no longer taking that roller coaster ride up and down and up and down, experiencing the hoppiness of it all. So the mystical teaching, my true self is happiness, back. Abide in happiness. So the question is, you ask yourself, what am I dependent on to be happy? And if you can answer that question, if you have a way to fill in that blank, if this happens, if only this happens, I will be happy. If only we get a Knetic spiritual center, I will be happy. If only we get something. Is there something that you can fill in that blank that you feel like will make you happy? If only my kids do this, I'll be happy. So if you can fill in that blank, and if you fill it in and you say things like that, then you are setting yourself up for the roller coaster, the happiness again. You're setting yourself up for ups and downs of life. And so what people try to do, because there's this innate feeling in people that I should be happy all the time, because the true essence is happiness all the time, and that leaches through into the personality. So people don't know why they feel compelled to be happy all the time, but there's an inner force in everyone that compels everyone to try to find happiness. So everything everyone is doing, even the most horrible deeds, that person is doing, they're trying to somehow find what they feel will make them happy. And so what they try to do is jump from one happiness moment to another. So people plan their lives, I'll do this, I'll go to the party, and then, or after work, we'll go to the party, and then we'll do this, and then we'll do that, we'll go to the beach, and all of these wonderful things that we can go from here to there and just have these happy moments. And that's not possible because there's inevitably the little falls there. So Heru was in this state, this egoistic state, this ego personality. destroying the good people as well. So Ra went to his son, Lord Tehuti, and he told him the predicament. Lord Tehuti represents cosmic mind. So he went to him and he says, we need to do something about Hathor. What do you suggest? So Lord Tehuti suggested to concoct this drink, this beverage called Setjer. And the Setjer, it's made up of blood,
Beer, blood, and the souls.
all the good things you liked. Beer, blood, mandrake. Like you'd say, so beer, right? People drink beer, right? And you say, well, who drinks blood? But actually, there are dishes in the Caribbean that are made with blood. So they're actually, this time of year, it's a favorite time. My aunt and uncle visited my mom, and they told me how many tons of it they make because they sell it to people. And yes, I used to partake of it too when I was younger. So, huh?
Is it animal blood? Is animal blood?
Black pudding.
Yep. And they make it in Puerto Rico too. In the Caribbean, in the Spanish, they also have their own version of it as well too. So yeah, so it's not far off from thinking of people.
So it's on you.
Well, I tell people that when people say I can't be vegetarian or vegan, I said, listen, if I can do it, I don't know what I ate. But my brother actually says it's because I was not very discriminated in what I ate that I can then become vegetarian because I didn't discriminate. That was good too. Okay, so the intervention is being planned for Goddess Hathor. So the Setjer, the blood, the beer, the mandrake. So part 2 to the quiz. The blood equals, who remembers? Intoxication with worldly desire. So egoism, this awareness, I'm the body, I eat bodies. And then the beer symbolizes intoxication with worldly pleasure. Actions, seeking actions in the world to become fulfilled. And then the mandrake is the highlight of the drink. That's the key ingredient. What is the mandrake?
Spirit.
What is the mandrake?
The soul of Asar.
Repeat it, say it loud.
The soul of Asar, you said. Is that
Close.
Ra.
Huh?
soul of
Ra.
What about Ra?
Sefik Ba Ra.
Not Sefik Ba Ra.
Soul of Ra.
Right, the Ba, yeah. Not the 7 souls, but just the souls of Ra. But the implication is there for that too. But it's like multifold, like as many people actually as there are in the world, that all the souls. So intoxication with the souls of Ra. And so the key here is that when aspirants come to the teachings, you kind of come as you are. You bring your blood and you bring your beer, and you attend. What is key? What is it that gets an aspirant to even come to the teachings? It's that mandrake, that infusion with the soul of Ra. And if you infuse that into your life, that is the intervention. That is what's going to allow the transformation to start. And then something else is needed on top of that. It's an aspect of the mandrake. So there's a parable of a sage. He was asking Ra. Seba and I were trying to remember the parables last night. So he was asking Ra, tell me about the glory of Knetic Nefer. And what is Knetic Nefer?
Good association.
Good association with truth. Association with the higher self, really. And then it takes all the different forms of association with the spiritual preceptor, association with your other aspirants who have a common interest, association with yourself through your shedding practices. All of those are Knetic Nefer, good association. So the sage was asking Ra, tell me about the glory of Khnum Nefer. So he said, I really don't have time to deal with this. I have to deal with all these people over here. So tell you what, there's a squirrel down by a tree over there in the park. Why don't you go ask that squirrel what happened about the good association, what's the glory of it, and the squirrel will tell you. So the sage goes to the squirrel and asks the squirrel, he said, what's the glory of good association? Can you tell me? And the squirrel drops dead. So he said, okay. So he goes back to Rod. He says, okay, this girl died. He said, I still don't have time to deal with you and your questions. Look, there's a monkey. Go to ask that monkey over there. This is the right word. So he goes to the monkey, and the monkey's jumping around in the tree and all over. And so he goes to the monkey, and the monkey he says, monkey, can you tell me what's the glory of Khnum Nefer? The monkey drops dead. So, okay. So then he goes back to Ra again, and he says, Ra, the monkey dropped dead too. He said, listen, I still don't have time to deal with you and your question. There's a prince in the city. Go to the city and see this prince, and he was just born, so he's a newborn in his crib, but anyway, go and ask him. And the prince is going, and the sage is going, oh my gosh, like, if he drops dead, like, I'm going to be beheaded or something. So he's all worried. So he goes to the city, and he, finds his way. Makes his associations to get in to see the prince, the baby in the crib. And so then he goes to the prince, and he says, Prince. He says,
this one part.
Oh.
He asked the king to see him alone.
Oh.
Something bad happened.
So last I forgot, he asked the king to see the prince alone. the king and the queen to see the prince alone, just in case something happened. He wouldn't be beheaded right away.
Can you get out?
He's a sage or something. He can't escape. That would be unrighteous. So he went there. So he asked the baby. He said, "Tell me about the glory of Khnum Nefer." So the prince, the baby, started to actually speak to him. He didn't keel over, much to his relief. And he said, that squirrel in the park? He said, I was that squirrel in the park. But thanks to your good association, just your presence, your sagely presence with all your good positive vibrations, it allowed me to pass into another incarnation. It allowed me to become that monkey. I was also that monkey. So the squirrel symbolizes the dull mind, because the squirrel cracks nuts. That's hard head. So it moved from dullness, and then became the monkey. The monkey's moving all around as the agitated state of mind. So and then he says, and again, thanks to your good association, I was able to move from that incarnation, and now look at me, I'm a prince. And who do we know as a prince? Heru, right? So it became Heru through the benefit and the blessings of good association. So that's the power of good association. That's the power of coming into the teachings on all the different levels. It will lead you to become Heru, discover that Heru within you. So the mandrake symbolizes this entrance into the lucid state of mind. And the lucid state of mind is like key, because many aspirants, like when you want to make changes in your personality and transforming personality, many times you find like you hit against like a brick road. And that is oftentimes because the changes that you want to make to transform yourself can really only occur when the mind is in a state of lucidity. If you are in a state of dullness and you're in a state of agitation, you're not going to be able to make substantial changes during those times. So you have to get to mind to this state of calmness, of lucidity, to be able to do the important work of spiritual transformation. So, after so Lord Jehuti took the Sejeret, and he gave it to Hathor. And she drank it, and she became infused with the mandrake. And so it had kind of a sedative effect on her, and a calming effect on her. and she was able to finally sit down and be calm enough. It's still very agitated initially, but Lord Jehuti came to her as her spiritual preceptor, as her spiritual teacher, and he started to give her all of these teachings, this Kanum Nefer, the good association. He started to give her the philosophy of Shetan Eter. Through many different parables he told her, and we're not going to go into that in this particular presentation. But essentially, he gave her the integral Shedi disciplines in the Simatawi. So she practiced Uwashu and Uwa meditation, Uwashu devotion, and he told her parables about Ma'at, and she had to practice Ma'at, develop an ethical basis, and Reiki, the wisdom philosophy. So, something happened here. It's supposed to be covered. Oh, there. So, who you think you are before the mysteries is Set, essentially. The Setting personality, right? The ego personality. And then you come into good association, Kanu Nefer, the mystery teachings, and then you're told that you are Heru, you're the higher self. And the higher self, in our mythology, the glorious light is Ra. But also, the higher self is also Heru in the Assyrian tradition as well, too. So, when I mention Heru here, I'm referring to higher self, and essentially Ra and Heru are one and the same. So not to be confused. But it's a state of abiding peace, it's a state of abiding happiness, and it's the source of all happiness. So all happiness comes from this source. It's just whatever state of mind that allows how much of it to trickle through to determine if you're experiencing dullness, if you're experiencing agitation, or if you're experiencing lucidity. How much happiness you experience just depends on how thick or thin those clouds of the mind are, the mental clouds. And how much worries there are, how much agitation, how much hatred, how much anger, how much greed. So the question is, if the sun is all light, how come we experience darkness, night?
Ignorance.
Oh, speaking physically.
Oh.
The sun's sun.
Earth rotates.
And, so how do we experience darkness? When what?
When the sun is aligned with the earth, the sun is on the opposite side of the earth, and
So like it's going to get dark for us tonight. So what does that mean about our position relative to the sun?
Turn away. Turn away from.
turned away
We've
from
turned
the sun.
away, right? So right. So we've turned. So the sun is always light, but when we turn away, then we say, "Oh, it's dark," and that's the same thing. The self is always abiding happiness and peace. So there's like everything's pervaded by abidance, peace, and happiness. But then people go like, "If that's so, how come I'm unhappy?" So what's the answer to the question?
Turned away.
Turned away from it. So upon entering the teachings of Shetan Eter now, you learn that about this Heru aspect of yourself, this higher nature. So before you're set, now you learn about Heru. And so there's this composite form that the aspirant associates her himself with. And the Purdham Heru text actually even addresses this composite form. It talks about it. It says, it is Heru when he has two heads, one being with Ma'at and the other being with unrighteousness. Right? So it's Heru with two heads, one being with unrighteousness and one being with Ma'at. So when somebody tells you you're a two-faced, you know what they're saying? You're still composite. You're a composite. So in this composite form, on one hand you're saying, oh, I'm the higher self. I'm Heru. I'm the goddess. I'm the divine being. I'm Ra. But then on the other hand, you're saying, but I'm still very egoistic, and I'm working through this egoism that I have, and I'm trying my best, and So the hekau of the composite personality becomes, I am the higher self, but I'm still very egoistic. I am the higher self, but I'm still very egoistic. I am the higher self, but I'm still very egoistic. So just imagine us all chanting here. I'm the higher self, but I'm still very egoistic. What kind of a spiritual chant is that?
Bipolar.
You're all not chanting to me. Come on, don't you want to chant? Bipolar. But yeah, this is what happens when aspirants come into the teachings. So I'm telling to you for those who may find themselves in these forums, but also as teachers, to realize the nature of spiritual growth and growing into the teachings. So the teachings, and you saw it, the Purta Maru, it documents this state. So it's not an unnatural way of spiritual development. But as you can see, it has its limitations. And therefore, you need to go beyond it. And so the teachings tell us this, or teachings, Knetic teachings tell us, it is not possible to give oneself to the body and the bodiless, things perishable and things divine. The one who has the will to choose is left a choice of one or other. For never, 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 never can the two meet, or should the two meet. And those souls to whom the choice is left, the waning of one causes the growth of the other one, causes the other one to show itself. So you're either going to be Set, or you're going to be Heru. You cannot be both at the same time. So you cannot be Set, but I'm still very egoistic. That's who you are, when you're seeing that, those identifying with that as who you are, then your little Heru is waning at that time and fading. On the other hand, if you're identifying yourself, I am Heru, I'm the higher self, then your Heru is growing and your Set is fading. So this slide is borrowed from Sigama's presentation later on today. I couldn't help but steal it. And you'll see why. So the battle of Heru and Set. I took out a lot of the animations out of mine just to make it faster to go through for time's sake, so this will make up for it. So the battle of Heru and Set. What do you know about the battle of Heru and Set? It went on for what? It was a short battle or a long battle?
Still going on.
3 days.
Of course.
3 days.
3 days.
3 days.
80.
It went on for, it wasn't a quick fight though. It wasn't like, it went on for a long time.
80 days.
And it went on and it was on, and it was, Heru had the upper hand. Then what happened? Set get the upper hand, and it was kind of a little bit of a stalemate for a long time. So why did the battle end in a stalemate for a long time before victory was attained by Heru? So there's another Knetic proverb that says, he who is wrong fights against what? Himself. He who is wrong fights against himself. So the composite, this little composite, is that who you are as your true essence? Is that what the teachings tell you? Are you composite Heru Set? Is that your true essence? Are you Heru with 2 heads? You want to do the chant again? You didn't chant with me before. If you're not sure, you can try the chant and see how it feels. Are you this composite? Is this your true essence? Is this what
It's not a true essence. Okay, that's the part of the
right? Is this what the teachings tell you? Is this who you are? The true essence of who you are? Composite? No, you're not really this composite.
No.
Heru Set, 2-headed being. So the key point is that even though you may be thinking that I'm this ego personality, but I'm the higher self, and you're kind of thinking that, you know, I'm Heru. But if you're still also, at the same time, whether consciously, subconsciously, also fallen into this aspect of, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm miserable, I can't believe I did that, I did this I'm a horrible person. If you're still going into those egoistic thought processes, then even on a spiral, you'll be thinking, oh, I had this higher self, I'm thinking of myself as a higher self, really or not. Really or not. And if you're fallen into this little mix in of who you are and not really being aware of it because you're still thinking, oh, I'm the higher self and I know that. But you're not really thinking it, you're not really acting like it, it's not really expressing in your life, then the fight is really set against composite you. And as long as there's that impurity of set there, then it's essentially set that's there. So it's like you can have gold, right? But if you have it mixed with impurities, it's still impure, as opposed to when you have the pure gold. It's not as valuable, it's not as rich. So as long as set is there, it corrupts it. And so therefore, it's a stalemate because you're using a limited idea of who you are to fight a limited idea of who you are.
Right. Wow.
So you're holding on to set. At the same time, you're trying to let go of the set, but you're still holding on to set. So essentially, the stalemate occurs when the battle becomes between set versus set. So you're actually fighting your own self. So you think it's your higher self, but it's your ego personality that's really battling yourself. And this leads to spiritual stagnation. So no matter how little that Heru aspect of yourself is, or your awareness, or your understanding, or your true essence, it's all powerful. And it's something you can hold on to and assert fully, I am Heru. I am the higher self. No matter how much of an inkling that is. Because what the teaching says, if you assert it, right, it's going to grow. And what's going to happen to the other one? It's going to wane and fade out. So, as an aspirant, you have to choose, are you Heru with two faces, the spiritual aspirant of egoism, or are you Heru, the pure Heru, the higher self, the divine self? So, as I said, coming into the teachings, this is okay to a point, right? Because we would have to say this is better than when we didn't have the Heru head there, right?
Right.
So it's a step up, but now one has to grow beyond this to fully own one's Heru nature. Because if you choose the Heru with two faces, then your Hakao becomes like this. Again, like what we chanted before. Nupu, right? Nupu means I am, and it should be that I am that's reserved for your true essence, the I am of who you are. But Nupu, happy, sad. Nupu, horrible person, divine self. Nupu, sad, detachment. And it sounds funny, but this is what is playing out in one's life. Nupu.
Bipolar.
Nupu, hate, forgiveness. Nupu, angry, serene. Nupu, anxious, calm. So the mind kind of stays in this agitated, nishesh, dull, umet ab type state. And so what happens, how this plays out in the personality and in one's actions, is that you're going to find that it's going to be difficult to detach from one's actions. So we talk about how you have to be detached from the actions and the fruits of actions. So you're going to know that philosophically, but you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to be clinging to actions in the past that you maybe were hurt by, or that maybe things that you did that you can't forgive yourself for. You're going to have ongoing feelings of guilt and remorse and sorrow. And it may not plague you all the time, but it's going to come out at periods of time because you're switching between, you're having this Heru and Set aspect of your being. You continue to judge yourself in negative ways. And this is how many people, like in the New Age, like there are many New Age people in the world, right? And they have the New Age teachings, but they're still very worldly personalities. You'll still hear them talking in these ways that are just very up and down. You know, I had a horrible day today. Oh, my life is terrible. Or oh, my life is good. You know, and it's just up and down. So when we talk about integration of the personality as one comes into the Knetic teachings, integration of the personality, we're not talking about accepting this composite idea of who you are. We're talking about integrating the idea and the understanding of yourself being Heru into your life, not composite Heru. Right? The battle is Heru versus Set. So you have to assert Heru as who you really are. And in doing so, allow the personality, which is illusory, to wane. So when you have to choose, so we already done the Hekau for the composite, and we did the Hekau for Set, and we did the Hekau for composite Set. Now, when you choose Heru, this becomes your Hekau. Nupu, purified eco. Nupu, fearlessness. The Nupu, I am. Nupu, serenity. Nupu, peacefulness. Nupu, abiding happiness. Nupu, unaffectedness. Nupu, detachment. Nupu, mental equanimity. Those are the qualities of Heru. And those are your true essence. And those are the qualities that you should focus on. And those are the qualities that you should identify yourself with. So there has to be a clear line of demarcation between yourself and your not self. Who you are and who you're not. You have to be really clear about it. Since the not-self is misunderstanding as to your true essence, what is necessary is to bring understanding of your true essence in. That the self alone is real, the higher self alone is real, and the ego personality is an illusion. And if you have like a dark room, like say at night when we came here and the lights are all turned out and it's dark, we flip on the light switch and what happens to the darkness? It melts away. Do we spend time pondering, like, do we stay at the door going like, wow, I wonder how long that darkness was there? I wonder all the things that happened. No, the light comes on and there's no further thought to the darkness, right? And that light that comes on, relates to enlightenment, the light of understanding that comes on, the light of wisdom, the light of intuitional wisdom. So in the Battle of Heru and Set, it ended in a stalemate, or it had many parts of it became a stalemate because of this, of Set, of Heru not owning his true essence. So when he attained victory, Neru means victory, victory to Heru, is when he was able to actually let go of that composite form. When he stopped identifying with his actions, when he stopped feeling bad and dejected. Because remember in the story, right? He cut off his mother's head. He stormed off, all upset. Before his eyes were gone. He was in a pitiful state, feeling sorry for himself, feeling bad. Why can't he win? And the throne should have been his in the first place. And why does he have to go through all this darn thing? Who's all this state he was in, and he had to basically stop feeling sorry for himself, stop feeling like a failure, stop feeling dejected, and own his own true essence. And that's when he was able to become Urajit, enlightened. So the question is, when one's understanding, when one comes into the teaching, and one has not fully experienced their higher nature, right? So you have the philosophy that you're the higher essence, but you're not experiencing it in your its fullest capacity. Your understanding is not intuitional. What are you supposed to do when your understanding is teetering? How do you get through?
Meditation.
Be still.
Faith.
Sit down and shut
Faith.
Writing's on the wall.
Literally. So this is where that, Seba Ma will say, this is our philosophy. This is our belief. These are our teachings. This is what we do. This is how we get through. We apply the teachings. So you accept the teachings. You don't argue with the teachings. The teachings, what the teachings tell you, you do it. And so their faith is needed, right? The initiatic precepts talks about faith in the teacher, faith in the teachings, faith in yourself, faith in your ability to act with wisdom, faith in your ability to know truth from untruth, real from unreal. And so this type of faith is not blind faith. It is faith that is founded through your practice. It's faith that's going to be realized. But in the beginning, when you don't have that understanding, you have to go in faith. So if Seba Ma was actually to, suppose a puddle of water developed, a beautiful lake developed here, separating yourselves from where we are. And Seba Ma said, just come over, step in it, come over to us. Would you have the faith to come over?
Yeah, just walk on.
And you don't know how deep it is, and you don't know if you're going to drown, and you know how. So the faith actually gets you through that area where your own higher self is not developed enough, but you can't afford to listen to the Sethian aspect of you. You can't afford to lean towards Set and become that two-faced personality. And the other aspect that has to be cultivated is forgiveness of self. So the teachings also say, so we're talking about the acceptance of the teachings, right? And applying the teachings as they say, without questioning and without being westernized, American, like, well, why do we have to do this? Well, I don't have to do that. I'm an individual. I don't have to follow. I can do it my own way. Acceptance of the teachings. Old Caribbean, I know, culture. You just do as you're told. And so it's essential for you to detach from your actions. And even and especially the bad ones that are more difficult to detach from. That's what the teachings say. But how do you do that? So this is where my veterinary medicine and the Purta come together really nicely. So I'm a veterinarian, so you know. So it's okay to detach from all the crap, literally, that you did, and figuratively, and will continue to do for a bit longer. And the Knetic term for crap in this context is excrement, and actually the term is used in the Purta text. In chapter 4, in a few places, but in chapter 4, particularly in verse 18, it says, Set put excrement in the face of Heru. Basically, he rubbed his nose in it, right? And so, for dogs, I want to go through this little illustration with dogs. When dogs poo, right? And you're trying to housebreak, those of you who've had pets, you're trying to housebreak the dog. What do people do? You probably all know this, because you probably, if you had a dog, you've probably known somebody, you've probably done it yourself. The dog poos in the living room. You come home, you're all frustrated. I can't believe you did that. You should know better. And what do? You rub the dog's nose in it. So I think, maybe the source of it is the Purta and stuff. Because people really believe this. And so there's a whole different aspect of training dogs that has been around for recent years called positive reinforcement. And they've done studies to show that dogs do not know better. Dogs have a unique way. They poop. If you don't catch them while they're pooping, or like within 2 seconds, they're like, I don't know what that is. Who did that? They truly don't know. And they're willing to detach from their crap very easily. They will walk away from it. And they will leave it there, and you come home and you said, who did that? And they go, I don't know. People think that they know because they come home and the dog runs and hides. The dog doesn't run and hide because the dog knows it did it. The dog runs and hides because they know, if I'm near that thing when this person comes home, they start yelling at me and putting my nose in it, and I don't want my nose in that crap. So I'm going to run away and hide. They pick up the tone of the person, and they are scolding. It's like, yeah, it's there, it's crap, but I don't know where it came from. I have nothing to do with it. So if only people could be at that level of disowning the crap the minute it falls from you. Instead of, but what we do, human beings do, just the way we rub the dog's noses in it, we get set to, we grab the Setian aspect and like, smear it all over, and even like embellish it. So. The other thing about that, the way dogs are, so there's this whole aspect of training called positive reinforcement, which, and the positive reinforcement is basically, you prevent the act from occurring, and then if you catch the pet in the act, you can basically grab them, they say, hey, no, grab them, take them outside, put them in the yard, do it. Or you even train them, don't give them an opportunity to even have the accident. But basically, rubbing their nose in it has no effect on them learning not to do it. So no matter how you say that to people or to clients, no matter how many times they will argue with me, they'll just argue with me, no matter what scientific, and they actually, a group of behaviorists just did even a scientific proof to offer proof like, no, they did an experiment to show that dogs don't attach to it. And you say that to people and it's like, oh, no. He knows. She knows she did it. And I said, there's even like scientific proof. Oh, no. He knows. She knows she did it. So there's the way the human mind is. It's not able to accept easily, even when there's proof. And this goes back to acceptance and application of the teachings. Because if you can't even accept that your dog doesn't know that it pooed there when it walks away from it, and we're trying to convince you that, how are we going to convince you that your own poo, you can walk away from it and you don't have to rub your nose in it? And that's what the teachings are essentially telling you. You don't have to put excrement all over your face. And Western psychology and Western culture, the way it is developed, is that if you don't, if you detach from it, you pooed, you detach from it within that 2 seconds, so you don't identify it anymore as your Heru nature, then, you're a sociopath. Right. There's a difference between a spiritual aspirant and a sociopath. Spiritual, Knetic, mystical teachings in general, it has an ethical foundation and basis. So that is integral to it. So a spiritual aspirant is not a sociopath. A spiritual aspirant is very much aware of the negative effects of the poo, but how do you deal with it in a way so that you can continue to grow spiritually effectively and not stagnate? How do you handle that poo and in a proper way? And that's not by feeling guilty about it, feeling remorse about it, hanging on to it, not forgiving yourself, beating yourself up in the head. Those are not the ways. But in Western culture, many times that's what we try to get kids to do. We want you to feel bad about this thing, because the more you feel bad about it, somehow it's going to make you feel good about yourself.
It makes the other person feel good.
So detaching in this way, it's not a cop-out. And if you don't buy it, take a leap of faith in the teaching and trust in the teaching and do as it says. Think of Goddess Hathor, right? When she fell, what did she do? She first was carrying out the will of Ra, but then she became essentially a murderer, because then she was killing people just for her own pleasure. So how low did she fall? How low did she fall? How degraded was she? And yet, she was able to, as we're going to see, raise herself up through the mandrake, the infusion of the souls of Ra, and through the Knetic. So regardless of what the past was, and everybody in previous lifetimes have killed, have murdered, have robbed, have stolen, whatever, regardless of what the past, in past lifetimes or future lifetimes of, this is the glory of Knetic. It can bring about that transformation from our low levels of degradation to Nahas, spiritual enlightenment. From the dull mind, right, the squirrel with the nuts, the monkey mind, to the Prince Heru. And so Hathor had to go through this process too. She had to be able to let go and detach from all her actions to be able to transform herself back into her true essence. Or to even to think of being able to do that. You can't attain the Has unless you're able to do that. So for her to, in the story, to attain the Has, it means that she too had to do that. So the Knetic proverb says, as you think, so shall you become. And that's very powerful and very important to be aware of. So Seba said, I guess, actually he was going to do a book in mystical psychology. But these teachings are mystical psychology. This is how you are able to transform yourself without getting stuck in the composite Heru and Set phase of your spiritual growth and become stagnant. And mystical psychology means detaching from the Setian ego personality and asserting your higher self. That is mystical psychology. And so our teachings tell us to destroy an undesirable rate of mental vibration. What do you have to do? You concentrate on the opposite. So it's kind of that simple, but yet that profound, because it's not necessarily easy to do, but that's what has to be done. So when you're actually, you may be feeling impatient, but you have to be careful with, oh, I'm being so impatient, or I'm feeling impatient. This impatience is me. Because then you're identifying with that second aspect of your personality, that ego personality, that composite. So instead of, I was so impatient, if you recognize impatience within yourself, what can you do? You assert, I am patience, I am Heru, rather than hekaizing or mantracizing the lower self. I am unhappy, I am awat ab. Expansion of heart. I hate how I look, I am nefer. Beautiful. I can't forgive myself for, I'm the essence of forgiveness. I'm depressed, I am cheerful. I can't believe I got so angry, replaced with, I am kind. I love how I look, I'm nefer. I hate how I look, I love how I look, I'm nefer. Beautiful existence. So this is the proverb that gave the title. So it says, what is the source of sadness? And I put in parentheses that any of those other egoistic types of sentiments can be substituted for sadness, right? What is the source of egoism, of anger, of hatred, of greed, of envy, jealousy, of fear? But feebleness of mind. What gives it power but the want of reason? Rouse yourself to combat, and it quits the field before you strike. So that's really what you want to do. You want to be able to rouse yourself to combat so that even before the sadness takes root, even before the anger takes root, even before the greed, the envy, the jealousy, or whatever egoistic quality takes root, you rouse yourself to combat. And it was a feeling coming into you. I feel the anger. And you rouse yourself to combat. And it goes away. You're Heru. You're Heru. The Setian starts to come. I'm Heru, I'm Heru. And it fades away. And really you want to be able to do it, become so efficient at doing it, so that it happens it occurs just as it says here. It quits before you, the field before you strike, but it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes it expresses. And then when it expresses, you have to work through it. So there's, in the mysticism, we talk about like a line drawn and like in rock, like, hieroglyph carvings, like if you draw a line in rock, it's not so easy to smooth out and to wipe away, right? You actually have to chisel it out and, take a lot of work to get rid of it. So those are like really, really deep impressions, those dull impressions. And when they express or deep anger, it's going to take a while to recuperate from that. And then there's a line drawn in clay, something that's moldable, soft, putty. You still have to deal with it, right? If you put a line in clay, you still have to kind of like smooth it out and work with it a little bit, but definitely it's not as deep as when it's drawn in rock. So that's a better state of way to have your mind. So if like you become angry, and maybe you used to stay angry like for a week before, that was like the line drawn in the rock. But now, like after a few hours or maybe a day, you're able to like work through the teachings and bring the teachings and mold with it and bring them forth, and like you're kind of kneading and working the little putty and smoothing it out. And then like in a day, the anger disappears. Okay, that's better. And then there's line drawn in water. What about the line drawn in water? You make a line in water and what happens?
Goes away.
Instant.
Right, it's almost instantaneously. And that's kind of how you want to even get your mind to that state. So that line drawn in water, you may, a thought of anger may come in and it comes out. Feel of jealousy come in and come out, and it goes away. And then there's the enlightened state where there's no line on anything, none of that. It doesn't. There's an awareness of it, but you're not affected by it. So nahas, who remembers what nahas without the T means?
Awake.
Wakefulness.
Yes, and that's the one I wanted.
I wanted you to speak real briefly to that line that says, what gives it power but the want of reason?
Yes. The lacking the mental understanding, the awareness of your true essence. If you are fully enlightened, then your reason is you know you're the true self, and therefore you don't even have to get to that point of rising. It doesn't bother you. But if you're advancing in the spiritual teachings, so if you're like the line drawn in water, where your vigilance, that's what we're talking about, you're vigilant with the teachings, you are wakeful and watchful for when those states occur, and now you have your weapons. So what are going to be your weapons? The want of reason is the lack of ignorance of self, your lack of understanding of your true essence, and whatever degree, if it's like you're really, dull and you're just coming into the teachings, or if you're an advanced spiritual personality, then you're further advanced. But still, even when you lose it, all of a sudden you become your set self. You lose that awareness of, I'm the higher self, and it's like, ugh. You have to forget yourself, in other words, your true essence. So, rousing yourself to combat, what are some of the combat tools that you can apply?
Your cow.
Your hakao, your meditation, devotion,
Attachment.
Breathing.
your breathing, your detachment, your reflection in the philosophy, right? Listen to the teachings, reflect on the teachings, meditate on the teachings. And then the threefold, the faith also. All of those things are what you can apply in that moment to rouse yourself to combat, so that you can try to get whatever emotion to quit the field before you even have to strike it. Before you can say, hey, I'm going to meditate. I'm going to meditate. And right away it like runs away and retreats. Oh, she's going to meditate. So although we talk about set like fading away, what happens really, it's the ego personality goes through a transformation. The ego personality doesn't completely fade away. So even an enlightened personality has an ego. What the enlightened person doesn't have is egoism. That identification, that erroneous identification. But they do have an awareness of the mind-body. They do have awareness of their space and air and this relative reality, because otherwise they'd be going om, 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 om. Everything would be just om, and they wouldn't be able to discern anything. So there's an awareness, but again, as we said, it doesn't obscure their awareness of their true transcendental self. So they become, as if we said, like like in Guyana, we have these things called four-eyed fish, and it has 2 eyes above the water and 2 eyes below the water. So they come like double vision, dual consciousness. They see above and see below. See always be in touch with the higher essence, but also be able to operate in practical reality. And so that aspect of the purified ego is called what? It's called what? It's called the Setna Nebira. That's his name. And that is the aspect of the, in this capacity, the purified ego then paves the way for the expression of the divine self in the world of time and space. So this is how Heteru is able to really perform her duties in the world of time and space. This is Heteru, that Heteru aspect. She comes into the world as the projection of Ra, and that's what same thing as Setna Nebira Ra is, that projection or purified ego that allows for the expression of Heteru in the world of time and space.
Nebu Ra?
Nebi. He can tell you. He can spell. So now we're into the third theme of the myth, which is the elevation and the glory of Knut Nefer. So Lord Jehuti shared all of what I just went through in the great extensive detail with Heteru. And Heteru started to actually remember where she came from, remember the land that she came from. And she started to remember her father, Ra. And she started to remember her true essence. He started And Lord Jehuti, he turned to Heteru after telling her all of this, and he tells her, Heteru aha, sekema, ten netrita, ten nebatawi, ten nebajer, uben tawi, reket iri, neteru iri, ane tej keren, ten nebatawi, ten nebajer, ten netrita neferd. Heteru, raise yourself up in your true form, as the great goddess of power, as the great life force. You are the mistress of the world. You are all-encompassing divinity. You are the light of the world. The people on earth and the gods and goddesses all praise your name. You are the mistress of the world. You are all-encompassing divinity, the great goddess of beauty. And so this gets to the fourth aspect of the theme of the myth, the Nahas. This is where Heteru then remembers her true essence and attains Nahas, spiritual enlightenment.
Is that written in the
Book of Chants.
Yes.
Or is it? It's not in the folder that we get today. For this, it's not in there.
It's in the book.
Yeah.
So we did a full.
The Book of Glorious Light Meditation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And we did a full, lecture on the scripture of it about 10 years ago.
It's also on page 53 of this book. Page 53.
So this concludes the presentation part of it. So now we're going to move into our performance part of it.
Seba Dja, any questions?
After the performance part of it. So we're ready for our performance part of it. So can Howard B need to do the camera specific and all over the place. If you want to take it off of the stand too, you can. No, we can't move that because we need to move this one. We can't move that this one. That's okay.
Can you smooth the chair over?
It's going to be. Where do you want it? Here? Okay. Yeah.